Hello judges, this is Team CrystalEval, and we will be presenting our forward-thinking approach that focuses on the development of an impact evaluation design. My name is Susan Swingler, and I am an M&E specialist based in Vietnam. Our next team member is Jekezi Opera. He is an M&E specialist based in Nigeria, but unfortunately couldn't participate in the recording.
And I'm Rama Rapalani, and I am based in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I work as an M&E officer at a data consultancy. And we at CrystalEval have been approached by an NGO by the name of Play Africa, and Play Africa is based in Johannesburg as well. And one of their biggest visions is to prepare South African children for the future. And as you can imagine, this is a very big goal. And it requires, firstly, that it be worked on for a number of years. And also that, you have interventions that look to, various interventions that all work together, essentially. And so for us, that's how we've kind of thought about this evaluation. And we figure that instead of trying to evaluate the whole big thing at once, is to focus our attention on one of those interventions. And that intervention is the Developing Together program. And this program is specially targeted to children who are aged between 1 and 3. And they work with their parents, educators, and caregivers as well. And so ultimately, this independent research evaluation is going to measure any changes in a child's early development, as well as caregiver learning, right? And all as a result of the Developing Together program. And so when looking at the evaluation, we've decided to use a utilization-focused approach. And so the big benefit of this is that it will allow us to have a evaluation that is very participatory in nature. And ultimately what the utilization-focused theory does is it then makes us create products of this evaluation which are for the specific user and for the specific use. And so we've kind of got this overarching arm of a utilization-focused approach, which is very participatory, but what does that actually look like? And so to aid that, we've decided to use the collaborative outcome reporting technique as the vehicle and the framework which we'll use. And so the big thing with this is because we want the participatory approach, we need to figure out where the best places are to involve the stakeholders or the various stakeholders throughout the various processes of the evaluation. And so the CORT technique is going to help us frame that. And so the CORT technique is made up of 6 basic steps, if we can call it. And so further down this presentation, we're going to break down each of the 6 steps into what it actually looks like and what it means for the evaluation as a whole. But ultimately, the big thing that we want to be able to do is we want to scope the whole project, but also, scope it with the future in mind as well. And through that scoping process, we're hoping that it will enable us to discover things. And with these new discoveries and insights that we make, we then need to interpret them for the specific context and what it looks like and means. And then based on that, we'll then come up with recommendations. And as you've picked up, I keep mentioning participatory a lot. And so within this process and with these 4 steps that or not 4 steps, but 4 outcomes rather of these steps, ultimately, we need to learn together with the stakeholders to make this process we feel as sustainable as possible.
Thank you, Rama. I will present the 6 steps. The first being the scoping workshop. And this is our first inception meeting where we meet with Play Africa to clarify the theory of change, access all the available data, further develop evaluation questions, and set up timelines and responsibilities. During these talks, it's also possible to clarify their level of participation from each stakeholders, including the program staff. CrystalEval will play the role of facilitation and documentation through this process. The next step is a data trawl. This is a review of all the available information. We really want to understand the people and the processes behind developing together and how they may influence the overall goals of the program. This will likely influence how the evaluation is conducted and what methods we decide to use. So instead of being a method-driven approach, we want to ensure that steps 1 and 2 are conducted thoroughly. So the deliverable here is an inception report, which finalizes the work plan, and it'll include the final evaluation questions. Next is our social inquiry, and this is where data collection happens, and these are the specific methods. So in CORT, this can use any type of data collection method, and here we choose a mixed method approach combining quantitative and qualitative methods. Why do we do this? We want each method to corroborate the other one, and we mainly want to give a voice to our study participants. The first is our quantitative social inquiry. What we have here is an assessment of a child's early development. Here we've chosen the Early Learning Outcomes Measure, the ELOM. Why have we chosen it? It's an easy to administer age reference South African preschool child assessment. It's both valid and culturally appropriate. It'll indicate whether the ECD program is effective in preparing children for grade R. It also provides information for programmatic improvement. The benefit of this measure is that there is secondary data available from 2018, and we can match participants for their age and quintile. Here is what the evaluation design will look like. You'll see there's only a post-test, and the reason for this is that we've looked at this and thought this is a very valid and culturally appropriate method. However, it's only appropriate for children age 4 and up. And that is when the Developing Together program ends, so we would only have a post-test. For our other quantitative social inquiry methods, we will employ an educator survey adapting the ELOM, so we can look at ECD educator and center practices. And we will also ensure that we have virtual means by which we can collect this data, given that we've moving into a new normal post-COVID-19, where we need to engage with these virtual methods. If the program has a quality observation checklist available, we will use that, or we will develop one to ensure the program is meeting its quality parameters. Our qualitative social inquiry makes use of focus groups with parents and educators. These will be semi-structured, and we will gather information on their education and parenting practice, whether they've been significant changes here, and we'll also look at the intended and unintended outcomes of the program. Again, we will facilitate these workshops, and we might have to do so virtually. Right, data analysis, integration, and reporting. So our data analysis is descriptive and exploratory in nature. We will present patterns, anomalies, and differences in developing together participants compared with the secondary data we're able to access. We'll also triangulate this with information from the document review, our educator surveys, observational checklists, and focus groups. The result here will be a CORT report, or the first draft, and the idea of this report, framed as within a participatory evaluation, is that it is short and concise and can be accessed by all of the stakeholders that were involved in the evaluation. And of course, there'll be more detail provided in an index. Now, once the court report is finalized, it'll be submitted to a citizens' jury in step 5. So this is a purposive sample of stakeholders who act as citizens. And in this respect, they are the jurors on an issue that affects them and in their community. And we want to submit the evidence and our recommendations for them to make a final judgment. So they'll examine this evidence and consider alternative arguments and their own recommendations. We suggest separate citizens' juries so that all perspectives can be heard and valued. All of the findings in the citizens' juries will be again documented by the evaluators, and they will be presented at a summit workshop. This requires careful consideration, of course, because we will synthesize all the key findings and recommendations from those citizens' juries. And this is through this facilitated process, the final report and recommendations will be agreed upon. And these last 2 steps are really really important. And it's where the participants have ownership in the evaluations, the knowledge that is created, and the idea is that it forms uptake of the program findings and recommendations.
The implications of the evaluation approach that we've just shared with you are the following. So ECD is essentially the cornerstone of any person's development. And so we believe that the Developing Together program should be seen as the cornerstone of Play Africa. And what we want is we want this evaluation to become the baseline for future evaluations. And we then also want to embed M&E practices within the programmatic systems and the staff systems used. And so ultimately, why I want to do this is because we want to see integrated reporting across all of Play Africa's programs, just so that we can see how all the programs complement one another. And as mentioned, the Play Together program and this evaluation will be the cornerstone of all of that. So there were a couple of limitations, and firstly, there was no baseline, but really we actually don't see that as a limitation because this is now becoming the baseline. And to make sure that the participatory approaches aren't too appreciative, we're going to make sure that we have a delicate management and careful facilitation of any engagements and data that we collect. Thank you.